As last week's noted on Twitter, that was something of a downer. It was meant to be sobering. That's why we've laid on drinks for after. Also, Jacinda Ardern, Fabian's accused, Stella Liner. Who said economic chat can't be entertaining? Sucker. Our first speaker today has been at the sharp end of questions about economic priorities. The very sharp, the taking it to the streets end. She is the president of the Auckland University Students Association, and she is Earthmate Arena Williams. Please get things rolling with a warm welcome.
Nation business, a modern piece of glasswork down on the corner that you walk each day in passing. The elderly sales clerk won't ask with suspicion. The whole of motor corporation's giving its permission. A pair of mirrors that are facing one another, out in both directions, 1,000 little Julias. They come together in the middle of Manhattan. Waited since lunch, it all comes at once. Modern art to keep it out the closet. People who might own it, the sins of pride and envy. And on the second floor, the Richard Serra's kid.
So I thought I'd show you a bit of a video about my flat instead of actually telling you about it. So that's 8 20-somethings living in a damp flat about half an hour away from the city. And we can invite you around for Sunday night dinner, and we'll probably be serving you up the same shepherd's pie and tomato sauce that you served at your flat however many years ago. We're exactly the same as you were. We want to contribute, we want to volunteer our time for things that matter to us. We want our kids to have more than we do. But you've never been here before. Let's talk about the new place we've come to. 25 years ago, households with breadwinners over 55 had 10 times more disposable income than households with a breadwinner under 35. So you'd expect that, right? That people at the end of their lives were probably living more comfortably than those getting on the beginning of their career ladder. Today, those households with older breadwinners have about 60 times the disposable income of households supported by an under 35-year-old. National wealth is shifting upwards. I don't think young people are simply bearing the brunt of the recession. I think this is a predictable outcome of economic and social policy that serves a certain group of New Zealanders. Intergenerational equity, that's the iceberg I want to talk about. And all the little icebergs we'll talk about tonight are made of the same dark matter, that's inequality. We don't talk about intergenerational conflict. Commentators throw on jibes about baby boomers, but how am I meant to engage in rational discussion about it in a room full of people who are older and wiser than me? I mean, very unhappily, I might end up in front of you in an interview one day. I could give you a shopping list of complaints that boil down to one thing. Those who have succeeded, taking from those who have not yet had the chance. We don't live in a gerontocracy yet. I'll be careful about making sweeping claims about the old taking from the young, but plenty of commentators aren't so careful about making massive generalisations to explain the symptoms of intergenerational inequity that we see played out in my age group. Maybe the young deserve our fate, they'll say. We're entitled. We don't know what we want. We have so many choices and no fight in us. We're getting ourselves into debt. We have no idea how hard life is. Defining a generation by cultural traits and values is pretty lazy analysis, I think. Cultural traits are created in response to a prevailing system. We're all equally susceptible to these traits, but it wasn't my generation that created a culture of materialism. It's difficult to demonstrate, but in a comparison of high school kids in the US, the kids graduating high school in the midst of the American recession were a perfect example of socially responsible Republicans. They just wanted to earn decent money to live closer to their parents and, give their kids more than they had. They'll be denied that. What their parents achieved is now an American pipe dream. Think of a generation as an economic cohort. My generation is the trough. It's happening all around the world. We're being defined by unemployment. Here we're a generation that's lost to education, work or training. But the Spanish word for my generation means basically earning less than 1,000 euros, because that's what we're earning over there. In Tunisia, the word means wall leaders, because that's our primary occupation. Everyone currently emerging into the workplace will suffer the effects of unemployment. Me and my buddies, we'll get jobs. But the evidence suggests that initial wage loss for a worker emerging in a bad economy is around 6% for every 1% increase in the employment rate. That means the 3 of my flatmates who started full-time work this year are earning about 24% less than they would have 5 years ago. Let's talk about the warning signs now. On the night the Titanic sunk, it got 6 warning signals which it ignored. So I'm going to talk about the 6 things which I think have tipped me off to something really bad going on down the line. So the first is that we need your help. And people who want to succeed are going through extended periods of struggle. You've heard about all the grads who are moving home, the 25-year-olds who are moving back into their childhood rooms, bringing with them 25k of debt. That's actually not what I want to talk about. There's a skeleton in the closet of every successful 30-year-old middle-class person, and that is that everyone's parents help them out. Who's supporting summer internships, which pay well, compared to Macca's, but they require students to live on $190 a week to buy suits and a shirt for every day of the week before they even start? And the idea of having a baby at this age freaks me out, but who's going to pay for all this weird baby sleeping furniture and baby accessories and baby feeding implements and baby stuff? Hopefully my mum, because I definitely couldn't pay for that. Not that I'm having a baby. So you're probably sitting there thinking, that sounds reasonable, parents support their kids, and that's really cool, but that's also a really good way to keep people at the bottom down. I don't want to live in a society of patronage, but we already do. The second one is that bright Kiwis are leaving. Every country has a diaspora, but ours is the biggest in the world per capita. It's also the most highly educated in terms of how many grads our universities turn out. And I know we've all heard that before, but that shouldn't make you think, oh yeah, I know this. That should make you panic. That should make you freak out and call your niece in Melbourne and tell her to come home. 1 in 8 Kiwis are considering leaving the country. Our brain drain is 10 times larger than that of Australia. I study business at the university. 1,300 of my graduating class who get their chartered accountancy are heading overseas next year. 13k in foregone taxes we lose with that, not to mention the education investment that we've put into them, not to mention the fact that they're going to be spending their chartered accountant dime in other people's bars and restaurants. Why don't these kids want to stick around and create their own jobs here? I have plenty of ideas, but it's one of those questions why is that iceberg getting so close? The next one is increased child poverty. If ever there was a warning sign that the country has lost its way, it's to be found in the number of children in poverty. Neo-lib logic is pretty persuasive when you're talking about why people better themselves in society. But things like rational active theory and economic choice don't apply to 4-year-olds. There's 230,000 of them in this country. Children who live in damp homes and go to bed hungry. In most cases, it's not that their parents don't do everything they can for them either. And when these kids go to school, that's what their friends are dealing with too. It's totally normal to be hungry and sick. We have the resources, the knowledge, and the technology to deal with this. We ask ourselves why the political will doesn't exist, and then we shake our heads, and we blame it on national voters. I think the most left of the lefties in this room are pretty guilty of compartmentalising that particular issue too. I think this does motivate people to vote, and there's something wrong with our political system when it doesn't clearly give people solutions to that problem. The next one is about education. And this is what I want you to remember from this, and I passionately believe this, that when we figure out what's equitable in education, we'll work out what a fair New Zealand looks like. A good education system gives everyone who can achieve the tools they need to reach their potential. It coddles everyone along to a certain point, and then it unleashes smarty pants performers on the rigours of academia. That's how it should work. And unless you're completely mental and off the page that I'm on, you'll accept the smart kids are just as likely to come from Mangere as they are from Remuera. A bad education system says that it does that and then generates completely divergent results. I went to a private school, right? In year 7, we all thought we were going to uni. And by the time we graduated, the people who weren't going to uni were doing something weird and interesting like chopper pilot training or becoming a dock ranger. You can't tell me that my entire year level though was more clever, more inherently gifted than the whole cohort of sixth formers at rural schools that didn't make it anywhere near tertiary training. Youth Court Judge Andrew Beecroft calls it a third generational permanent underclass. And Marxist analysis has its ups and downs, but looking at our education system makes you believe in a Marxist class analysis. The next one is generation of borrowers. Surprise, the student president wants to talk about student debt. I won't bang on too much about that one. I think it is a warning sign of discontent coming down the road, and that's for 2 reasons. The first one is that private debt is what's the problem in New Zealand, that private debt is astronomical. And I think the second thing is that politicians getting tough about tackling Labour's 2005 election promise and the student loan bill will only redistribute public debt to private debt. I don't think that solves anything. The next one is disenfranchising certain groups. And I think many of the policies have been upheld by both sides of the political spectrum, seen as a direct refusal to shrug off the geriatric-coloured dream coat that our baby boomers have woven for themselves. A society that creates policies to benefit a few and to detriment many is not one that I'm prepared to serve. It's not really about young versus old at that level. I think we need to be very wise about how we're treating each other and whether we're treating each other fairly. So some ideas for a better New Zealand. I want to stay here, not just because it's home, but because it's awesome. My flatmates want to stay here, but 2 of them are already going overseas because they're looking at 100k worth of debt and thinking even with interest, I'm going to pay it back quicker at Australia. We want to stay here, and I want to live in a society where people don't give up their hopes and dreams just because they're born in the wrong place. And I want to live in a society where our best and brightest feel that they can contribute and better themselves. I want to live somewhere with the confidence that comes from knowing that we are moving in a better direction. And I think too often we engage in pointless comparisons with other countries, usually Australia, without actually looking at the specific policies and thinking about how we can replicate success. I think the best example of that is small and efficient economies like Singapore and Finland that have invested in their people and built success on the back of thriving high-tech industries and cutting-edge research. So I want to leave you thinking about education. And we bang on about education like it's some big bipartisan answer to all of our problems. It's not, but I genuinely believe it's the place to start. And I have a few questions about probably what we need to start looking at in terms of education. Before we get on to warning signals at all in this boat we're calling New Zealand, I think we need to make sure we're all aboard, that a whole generation actually get onto the ship and are there for the tough times ahead. We need to pay attention to those warning signals and avoid the yasu, which is intergenerational inequality.